New York City, one of the most visited and most desirable city break locations on the planet. A hive of bustling activity, iconic sights and attractions, and some incredible dining. A city synonymous with America and one seared into the consciousness of anyone who has grown up with even a slight interest in popular culture. Whether it's movies, TV, music, art or culture, New York has had a hand in shaping them all, making a visit to this incredible city a lifetime goal for literally millions of people. We love the place and make sure we visit as often as we can, but we can't help but notice it's getting a little pricey, and that is the understatement of the century. So we hatched a plan of seeing just how cheaply we could visit the city. With our trip finally coming to a close and us back in rainy old Blighty, we reflect on what was an amazing trip and what was largely a successful challenge, as we find out if we really managed to visit New York for only £1,000 per person. Hello and welcome to the final video in our Budget New York series, where we tried to visit New York City for only £1,000 per person. That budget included everything from flights, hotels, food and drink, attractions and activities. We even counted our coffees along with airport and in-flight purchases. And this was not a smash and grab trip, we wanted to be in the city for at least 5 nights. It was quite a task and required some pretty epic planning, but did we manage it? Let's take a look. In a word, yes. Well, pretty much. With a couple of beers on our final flight, we actually went $2 over budget. But that was a last gasp, I don't care moment, so basically yes. However, we did have an issue upon arrival that meant we went quite a bit more over budget. Due to the flight being delayed, we were unable to use the New Jersey transit that we had prepaid and instead needed to order an Uber, as it had gone 1 AM when we were finally ready to leave Newark Airport. This technically put us about £40 over budget for the entire trip. Still hardly something to get worried about. £1,040 per person is still a really good value trip, especially when you consider all the things we did and saw. The quality of the hotel we were in, the amazing food and drinks we enjoyed. It's a fantastic trip, and it's amazing to think we did this on such a tiny budget. This is probably the most important question, however, and here is the kicker. Was it worth it? No, but possibly not for the reasons you might think. Let's take a look at the various elements to see which bits were good value and where we think we went wrong and where expanding the budget may help. The number one reason we don't recommend this is the flights. Our flight out was horrible and really put the whole trip into disarray. We had chosen a really budget carrier, and their tardy scheduling meant we arrived into Newark super late, which pushed our hotel arrival into the early hours and our required expenses up. We just think the best option is to spend a little more and use a proper transatlantic carrier, preferably direct. The flight home was better, but it was still an arduous task, accompanied by some pretty inedible food and drink. We usually enjoy air travel, but with this level of service and food, there was no joy to be found anywhere. There is an argument that we could endure anything to get to our happy place, and this much is true. If flying this route with TAP Air was the only way to get to New York, we would happily strap in and get back on board. But it isn't, and there are so many better carriers for just a small extra outlay. That said, the option to see Lisbon on the way was pretty exciting, and we really enjoyed that. But that is not compatible for those looking to really budget hard, and there are other options, other airlines and other destinations where you can do a very similar thing, such as Iceland Air. We have no issues at all with our hotel choice. In fact, this was such a good choice, it will be on our list whatever budget we are on. Right in the heart of things, great service, decent breakfast included, and the great wine hours that were a lot of fun. We got a fantastic deal through our Fora partnership and can offer you a comparable deal depending on the time of the year you visit. Just head over to USA Travel Advisors and fill in the Contact Us form for a no obligation quote. We have a huge array of hotels on offer in the city that come with some amazing perks to really set your trip up with a bang. We'll talk a bit more about our new website later on in this video. We got this absolutely right. We saw and did everything we could have wanted, including an amazing Broadway show for only $49. This took a chunk out of our budget, but was absolutely worth it. The use of the Go City Explorer Pass was a genius move, and meant we got our fill of paid attractions, along with packing the trip out with free attractions as well. Here is a list of just some of the attractions and sites we visited. We did a lot, and we really didn't have time or energy to do a lot more regardless of cost. Using the Go City Explorer Pass was easily the best way to pepper in some paid attractions along with the free stuff to get the absolute best from the city. We paid for a 6-attraction Explorer Pass, which cost $170, using our discount code, which we'll find a link to in the description below. Using the pass, we visited the Top of the Rock, the Rockefeller Ice Skating Rink, Empire State Building at night, the on-location movie site tour, the Circle Line River Cruise, and the American Museum of Natural History. All in, this adds up to $311 and works out at an overall saving of $141. Now, in this scenario and on this budget, we probably didn't actually save anything. We were on a super tight budget, so we probably would have just done less for a similar sum. No ice skating, no movie tour, and maybe the Staten Island ferry instead of the amazing river cruise. So while the pass really didn't help us hit our budget goals, it absolutely allowed us to maximise the budget as much as possible. And after all, that's what these budget trips are all about, getting the best bang for buck. We have a full review of the pass coming up where we go into more detail about using the pass in New York and how it compares to some of its rivals or no pass at all. But in brief, we had no issues in any way. The pass worked flawlessly and we just showed up, scanned the pass, then visited the attraction, apart from just a couple that needed pre-booking. But again, this was no hassle at all. We love attraction passes and would happily recommend them to most people, but especially on a tight budget such as this, they really proved their weight in gold. Getting around the city, we used either the subway or just walked. We paid for a return trip to and from Newark on the New Jersey Transit for $33 per person. We needed to get an Uber instead on arrival after delays on our TAP Air flight that got us into the airport after the last train into the city had already left. Overall, we were pretty happy with our dining choices. We missed a few real treats and had to ration ourselves quite a bit, but we still got the full gamut of New York cuisine and could have hit all our must-try foods if it were not for the last-minute decision to skip Chinese for barbecue. Most of our dining was at the bottom end, but we had some really great meals and even got a fancy steak dinner and some really high-end cocktails included in our spend. Having breakfast included at the hotel was invaluable, and mental skipping lunch a few days was not such a big deal, without which we may not have stayed in budget or at least missed out on our final few luxuries. Honestly, most of the time when we skipped lunch, it was time-based. We were just too busy tearing around the city to stop and eat. But this is pretty usual for us, and to be honest, trying to have 3 square meals a day when on one of these trips was never going to work. We still hit all our food goals and overall ate pretty well, but we would usually do some blowout food experiences such as breakfast at Tiffany's or tea at the Plaza, but these were off the table on this kind of budget. We also had a lot less to drink than we usually would, in part due to the high cost of drinking in bars and restaurants in New York, but also due to the savagely cold weather that meant we tended to stay in of an evening rather than heading out for meals and drinks as we usually would. But only another $100 would have helped open up some of the dining opportunities we ended up skipping. One of the reasons we were able to get such a fantastic deal was the timing of the trip. This was low season, and parts of the city we have never seen so quiet. This was not helped by the snowstorms on arrival or the freezing temps that plunged down to -18 degrees centigrade. It really was bitter outside and definitely limited the time we could spend just wandering around. But the lack of crowds was really nice, and we would happily roll the dice and go at this time of year again. Sure, it lacked some of the pizzazz of Christmas in the city, and some attractions were limited or closed, but overall we got to see a lot more of the city as it was just so quiet. Swings and roundabouts really, but it needs to be noted that visiting at peak season will cost more, especially for hotel prices. Apart from the flight, this was probably the main reason we don't overly recommend such a tight budget. We found ourselves to be overly preoccupied with working out if we can afford something rather than if we wanted to do it, and that was a bit of a drag, especially as this was just an arbitrary budget cap. We guess if you're trying to budget mainly because that is all the money that is available to you, then this is pretty irrelevant. That is just a consequence of having limited funds. And it is the same no matter what budget you have. There are always trade-offs, otherwise we would all be travelling first class and staying in the Plaza's penthouse suite. But as we knew we had the funds to spend a little more, but were just restricted by the challenge, it felt a little irksome. Finally, as we are talking about the nature of our budget and the fact it was pretty arbitrary, it's important to note that if you are visiting on a set budget, as this is all you can run to at this point in time, then it's vital you have a contingency fund. Things can and do pop up unexpectedly. For us, it was our delayed flight that meant an unplanned Uber ride of about $100. This would have destroyed our budget and left us possibly struggling for food if we genuinely only had £1,000 to spend. So whatever budget you are on, make sure there's just a little extra in the kitty to cover these eventualities, even if it's just a spare credit card you don't plan on using. Things can and do happen, and you don't want them ruining your whole trip. So, what did we prove? Overall, we had an amazing trip to the city. Having such a restricted budget in no way spoiled the trip, and we both saw and experienced things that could be considered life-changing. The sun setting from Brooklyn Bridge Park, strolling through Central Park in the snow, stunning views of the towering skyscrapers, ice skating, the amazing foods we ate, a Broadway show. Honestly, it was all amazing. Every day was just filled with once-in-a-lifetime experiences, and as we collapsed into our hotel room each night, we were not only physically exhausted, but emotionally as well. It was 5 days of just packing in endless dream sites and activities. All the money in the world would not help us cram any more into our days, and a lot of the best and most rewarding activities were actually totally free. So while there is little point doing a trip like this for the sake of it, and while the challenge of it was quite satisfying, we think what we proved is you most absolutely can do the city justice on a much smaller budget than you might imagine. We hear all the time in forums and Facebook groups of people asking for budget advice and being told, New York is expensive, if you can't afford it, try another city. And that is utter rubbish. If you time the trip for low season, stay in a moderate hotel, or even cheaper if you are absolutely strapped, and stick to the cheaper food spectrum, you will have a blast. There is no need for some of the extreme budgeting tips many people give, like staying outside of Manhattan, which is terrible advice as you lose up to an hour each day commuting to your vacation, or only seeing the statue from the Staten Island ferry, which offers poor views and is nearly 2 hours of your trip lost. Remember to spend wisely and get the absolute maximum bang for your buck, with a very serious note that the most valuable currency on any city break like this is time. Use the subway a lot, walk a lot, and just soak in the amazing city. You really do not have to spend thousands and thousands of pounds to have a trip to New York. But likewise, you don't need to go so extreme you basically ruin your trip, which is where our new website and travel planning services come in. One of the main reasons for this video series, apart from just having an excuse to visit New York again, was to launch our new travel website, usatraveladvisors.co.uk. The aim of this is to provide personalised travel planning services for all those hard-to-reach destinations in and around the US. With our new travel partners, Fora, we can offer a huge range of accommodation options from absolute budget to top-of-the-line 5-star properties, and everything in between. Many of these offer amazing perks, just like the Edison in New York and the apartment we stayed at in Lisbon. So if you are planning a trip to New York, California, Hawaii, or anywhere in the States and want some expert guidance on planning and executing your trip, head over to USA Travel Advisors and fill in the Contact Us form, and we can help tailor the perfect itinerary for you or for any budget. We really do have some cracking options and offer real-life advice from the places we actually visit. Anyway, that's all from the £1,000 budget challenge. We had an absolute blast making this video series, and we hope you enjoyed coming along for the ride. We have lots more New York content coming up, or check out our previous USA trips. We hit Hawaii last year for a whole month, and had an epic East Coast road trip the year before for Halloween, and we already have our next trip booked, and that's going to be epic. We know, we say that a lot, but this one really is. Horsepower, helicopters, mice, messes, movies, sunsets, aliens, deserts, mountains, forests, snow, and much more. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.